Good evening, this is Brass Tax. I'm Dacha Jacob. We're coming to you live from the CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio. Prime Minister Modi has concluded his two-day visit to Russia. India and Russia have clinched a number of deals from defense to energy cooperation to infrastructure. Prime Minister Modi has also been conferred with the highest civilian honor by the government of Russia. But it also happened to be on the same day as one of the biggest children's hospitals in Ukraine was attacked. Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, tweeted saying that it was sad to see the leader of the world's largest democracy hugging the world's most bloody criminal in reference to Putin. Congress's Jairam Ramesh has echoed that, saying that the Vishwaguru turned Vishwabandhu must answer about all that boast about war rukwadi. Now, while the timing of the visit by the Prime Minister and the attack on the children's hospital by Russian forces may be a mere coincidence, how does India walk this diplomatic tightrope?
मैं ये बिना संकोच कह सकता हूं कि इन 25 साल की हमारी इस गहन यात्रा के मुख्य सूत्रधार आप रहे हैं और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि और पिछले अनुभव से मैं कह सकता हूं कि आने वाला भी हमारा कार्यकाल हमारे संबंधों को और गहरा बनाएगा और घनिष्ठ बनाएगा और हम नए नए अचीवमेंट को लेकर के आगे बढ़ेंगे।
रूस के सर्वोच्च अवार्ड से सम्मानित करने के लिए मैं हृदय से आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
जब मासूम बच्चों की कत्ल होती है, मासूम बच्चों को मरते हुए देखते हैं, तब हृदय छलनी हो जाता है। हमारी भावी पीढ़ी के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए शांति सर्वाधिक आवश्यक है, लेकिन मैं ये भी जानता हूं कि युद्ध के मैदान में समाधान संभव नहीं होता।
All right, we're now joined by Dr. Roxanne Zigon. He's a geopolitical analyst joining us live from Moscow. Alexander Merichko is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Ukraine. He's now joining us from Kiev. Manjeev Singh Puri, former diplomat, is joining us. RP Singh of the BJP and Charan Singh Sapra of the Congress also joining us. Charan Singh Sapra, you know, the war is a reality. It's a reality that's been going on for the better part of the last 2 years now. Prime Minister Modi, when he met President Putin some years ago, he said this is not the era of war. Today, while he met President Putin, openly in front of him, he said that the solution to all our problems cannot be found at the battlefield. He said we held open talks on Ukraine. War hurts all of humanity, and particularly when children are killed, it hurts all of us. What more do you expect a visiting Prime Minister to tell the Russian president? Because your leaders, Mr. Jairam Ramesh including, saying that this was wrong timing, that Prime Minister should not have gone at this time. How can he second guess the timing of when Russia is going to attack a children's hospital?
See, Zaka, let me tell you that India-Russia partnership is, time-tested, and repeated government, whosoever might be the Prime Minister, they have taken a similar stand. And India has always been cozy towards Russia because of various reasons. It is a trusted friend of India. It is the world's richest country in terms of natural resources and various other reasons. As far as timing, the issue of timing you are saying, let me make it little clear that Prime Minister could have selected a better timing, because from today 9 July to 11 July there is a NATO conference going on in United States, and the US President is hosting more than 32 countries over there, and NATO is very much against Russia's war on Ukraine. And to add on to it, unfortunately, yesterday there was a bombing of the hospital, and unfortunately many civilians, including the children, have died. And there was a snub from Zelensky, who you rightly said, who mentioned that world's largest democracy hugs bloody criminal. Does the BJP or Prime Minister have an answer to that? That is what Mr. Jairam Ramesh wanted to say.
Okay,
And
let me ask
secondly,
RP Singh.
the
RP Singh,
way
this is
Prime
what
Minister
Vladimir
has-
Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, tweeted. A Russian-made missile struck the largest children's hospital in Ukraine, targeting young cancer patients. Many were buried under the rubble. It's a huge disappointment and a devastating blow to peace efforts to see the leader of the world's largest democracy hug the world's most bloody criminal in Moscow on such a day. How do you respond to that?
Dacha is the first instance which has happened in last 2 years. Not. There are many attacks which have happened between the two countries. Russia has also attacked Ukraine, and Ukraine has also done damage to countries are fighting each other. So timing can't be an issue, because had it been that there was peace otherwise and Prime Minister visited and the war started, and then the issue would have been that. I mean, it's an ongoing war which is happening. Prime Minister is trying to work out a solution to the thing, to the total war as such, and it has tried to balance out the things between the two parts of the world. And he attends the G7 also, he attends the G20 also, and takes that message across, and then sent that message across. And then he was the only one who was able to tell the Premier Putin that war is not a solution. But as Congress is, they have to play politics into everything. I mean, shocking is that they enjoy playing politics into the international affair. I mean, I'm sorry to say that they're still into that election mode. They think probably election is still on, and they are into that mode.
Zaka, I will have to answer him, Zaka.
No, one second. Let him finish. One second.
Sir, Singh साहब थोड़ा सा इंतजार करिए, थोड़ा आपका टाइम आएगा, आप बोलिएगा ना सर, आपने बहुत साल रिलेशनशिप रखी है,
बोलिए ना.
So India has their own right to work out the relationship with Russia and the Western world also, and then India has done that very well, keeping India's interest in mind, not the Russian or the Western interest in mind. Whatever is good for us, we have done that, and then we'll keep doing that. And
Okay.
war is the solution that has been conveyed to Putin and also to the other part of the world.
So let me ask Dr. Zigon, how does Russia possibly justify, at a time when Russia is running out of friends, there are a handful of countries, leaders who have visited Moscow in the last 2 years since this war began, on a day when the Indian Prime Minister is arriving to Moscow to have the largest children's hospital in Ukraine bombed. More importantly than that, just this past month, you had as many as 80 countries from around the world attend a peace summit in Switzerland. India also attended that peace summit in Switzerland. And the final declaration there said that Russia must stop this war forthwith because it goes against the UN Charter. Of course, India did not sign that final declaration, but it was very much a participant in that summit. The onus today is on Russia to end the war. And on the day that the Prime Minister is there, how does one explain the largest children's hospital in Ukraine being targeted? What fault of those children? Dr. Zigon.
Thank you for this important question. First of all, let me clarify the notions here. Russia has never been willing to start a war. Russia has been forced to react on the geopolitical situation that has been taking place for more than 8 years in the regions which were aligned to Russia and were represented by the Russian citizens. And India is full of awareness, being a country that has been constantly throughout its history experiencing a high level of extremism and nationalism, how to deal and how to demonstrate a masterhood in peacemaking. Therefore, Russia has been just reacting on a disbalance of the geopolitical interest and crashing its interest from the side of the West. Second of all, I've been authored an article a few weeks before the peace conference in Switzerland has taken place, and I have clearly indicated that it's absolutely impossible, no matter how much countries would be invited, to sit around the table and discuss the peacemaking process without inviting Russia. And India has been demonstrated a very important step, because India didn't sign a communique, at the end of this peace conference in order to demonstrate its support and geopolitical awareness that it's important to follow for the balance. No one in the world is willing to start a war. It's important to think how to end it, in which way. And India and Russia are just the unique forces from the geopolitical point of view that are capable and have all the instruments, diplomatic, political.
No, but when will Moscow end this war, Dr. Zigon? It's been going on for 2.5 years now, and the onus is clearly on Moscow. I mean, if whatever the objective was when this war began, has that objective been attained? And if it has, then why is this war still going on?
Clearly, the president of Russia and political establishment in Russia and Russian society is willing to see the peacemaking process not just on the condition of the West, but based on the respect of the national interest of Russia. This is very important. This is two ways a process. So it's not only depending on Russia, it's also clearly said depending on the West, on the collective West.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Marechko. Even as Prime Minister Modi has concluded his 2-day visit to Moscow, there is going to be a NATO conference that will begin in Washington later tonight. And it's clear that NATO has been backing Ukraine with weapons, tens of billions of dollars of weapons. The latest being the US Congress passing about, I think, $60 billion worth of weapons. It was hanging in the balance for a long time. It's very clear that on the battlefield, after 2.5 years of this war, that Ukraine has lost control of anywhere between 15 to 25% of its territory. It doesn't seem plausible in the near future that that territory can be retrieved. And it doesn't seem, at this point of time at least, that Russia can be pushed back to its boundaries, as it were, before this war began in February of 2022. Should Ukraine concede that, look, this is what the situation is, NATO partners are running out of funds and running out of patience perhaps, Ukraine is running out of weapons, and therefore the only plausible solution to this war is to go back to the negotiating table and find a ceasefire?
Well, first of all, let me express our deepest and the most sincere gratitude to Indian people and to the Indian Prime Minister for participating in the Global Peace Summit. It was extremely important, and India can play a crucial role in bringing peace to the world and to Europe. We are grateful for that. As for your question, we will never run out our will and determination to continue to struggle to defend our homes and our families against genocidal empire. And we have already achieved certain progress because we managed to liberate 50% of the territories which had been previously occupied by Russian troops since February 2022. And to me, India can be very helpful to bring peace in a sense that we desperately need peace based on the UN Charter and on the principles of international law. And we distinguish it from the appeasement of the aggressor. The peace, the true, just peace, should be based only on principles of international law, which were mentioned today by the Prime Minister of India. Such principles as territorial integrity, sovereignty, and the non-use of force. And I hope India is also for this peace.
But who is able to enforce
which will help Ukraine to restore territorial integrity?
Mr. Marechko, who is able to enforce those principles? You talk about territorial integrity, sovereignty. The Russian view is there was creeping encroachment of NATO right up to its borders. And the Russian worldview is that all of these parts in the Donetsk, which they have annexed or invaded, are all part of the former Russian Empire. Who is going to enforce these rules? Even the United States and NATO don't seem to be able to enforce the rules that you have just outlined.
The answer is very simple. We together, all democratic countries, including the biggest democracy in the world, you can contribute to restoring territorial integrity and peace. And all other countries, because we have the aggressor and we have victim of the aggression. And we need to help the victim of the aggression and to punish the aggressor. Okay. It's that simple. It's requirement of international law.
Let me ask Mr. Mandeep Singh Puri, as a former diplomat, and you've seen many ups and downs in the relationship between India and Russia, and of course in the last 20-25 years in the relationship between India and the United States. This whole thing that has now become a political football, with the Congress's chief spokesperson saying that Vishwa Guru, who's become Vishwa Bandhu, should ensure that the war stops, and the Prime Minister landing up in Moscow on the same day that the Children's Hospital was attacked, that is insensitive. India at one point of time, Mr. Puri, and please enlighten our viewers, India has done business with America when at the height of the Vietnam War. Mrs. Gandhi met with President Nixon at the height of the unpopularity of the Vietnam War. India has done business with George Bush when America invaded Iraq without any UN Security Council resolution or any kind of mandate from the UN Security Council. It was an invasion of that country. India still had very, very close ties with George W. Bush. So if it's kosher on that side, it should be kosher on this side too.
Dacha, absolutely. Look, India has followed, in the past, it was the policy of non-alignment. We were equidistant. We thought that everybody tries to resolve issues of contestation through peace, through dialogue, and through diplomacy. Today, we call ourselves multi-aligned. We have close relationships with the West. Let's not forget, the Prime Minister, immediately after his swearing in, went for the G7 summit, where he met the Western leaders and he met President Zelensky. And now he's gone to Russia. Now, this timing business, we can talk about it, but we have our budget session out here. And, at any particular point, one will say, those who need to say that the timing will never be perfect. But there's a war on. We need to sort of understand this particular aspect. And that's important. Let me just make one point. As a country which is multi-aligned, which aligns itself for A, global good, and B, for what is in our interest, what is the point that we have made in terms of today's statement that the battlefield is not the place to sort things out? The message is, of course, to the Russians, but it's also to the Ukrainians and their friends on the other side. Look, the Switzerland conference, the Russians weren't invited. Now, there may be good reasons for it, but you yourself clearly mentioned that there was a declaration, but India, Brazil, and several other countries from the global south did not sign that. They were participants. They said their view. The world needs to look at dialogue much more seriously. But yes, there are contestations between countries. This happens. But our perspective always has been that let's push for peace. Let's push for dialogue. That's important because that's good for the world. And I must say, of course, it's good for us. How has this war been of any benefit to us? A peaceful situation, especially after what we went through for COVID, that's the kind of thing that we would have ideally liked. But we must make our point that the world must come together, talk, no matter how difficult.
Let me ask Charan Singh Sapra, if the import of what the Congress Party's accusation against Mr. Modi for going to Moscow even as this war is raging on and Children's Hospital has been targeted, the moot point is that you should not do business with strong-armed dictators who, as you say, are at the head of a genocide. India has done business in the past with Saddam Hussein. India has done business in the past with Idi Amin, with Muammar Gaddafi. These were by no means, lily-white souls. So if India could have, India has done business with the junta in the neighborhood in Myanmar. So, if India could have diplomatic ties with all of these folks that I just mentioned, why not with Vladimir Putin? He's an elected leader of Russia. He's been in the center of Russian politics for the last 20 years. What's wrong? And what's wrong in India looking out for its own interests? So if it means buying cheap Russian oil, then so be it. Mr. Sapra.
See, Dacha, it's not about not doing business with Russia. We have been doing continuous business with Russia. In various situations, India has been doing business with Russia as well as America. You have already explained that. We are not against that. But the issue is the way Prime Minister has tried to, politicize the entire thing. Now, BJP spokesperson was talking about that Congress is politicizing. If we are talking about business, let BJP spokesperson explain why Prime Minister does not talk on the trade deficit or the trade gap which we are having with respect to the trade with Russia, number one. Number two, as far as politics is concerned, why Prime Minister, while addressing the Indian diaspora, why does he want to demean the earlier Indian governments before 2014? He did the same thing which he did in South Korea or Shanghai, where he said कि 2014 से पहले लोगों को शर्म आती थी विदेश में ये कहने के लिए कि मेरा जन्म भारत में हुआ है. Similar thing he has done over here. The entire speech of Narendra Modi in Russia was mere rhetorics, and it was meant to enhance his PR, his TRP and headline management. Now these rhetorics don't work all the time. He has been doing rhetoric since last 10 years. So you talk about trade, you have not spoken about trade, you have not given a roadmap about the future trade with Russia. So many things are lacking behind. Prime Minister should concentrate on business with Russia. We are not against that, but we are against the kind of politics Prime Minister is doing against their own Indians or the Indian government before 2014, and the way he's trying to create a situation that it is only Modi who's doing everything. There's no Modi magic in this. This is a time-tested partnership.
We had a time-tested relationship with the Soviet Union going back to the 50s when Pandit Nehru was Prime Minister. In the 1971 Bangladesh War, the Russians sent an armed frigate to keep the Americans out of the Indian Ocean waters. You even have in 1993 when Russia became a sovereign country after the breakup of the Soviet Union, the Indo-Russia Friendship and Peace Agreement was signed when Narasimha Rao was Prime Minister. So Mr. Modi is only continuing. In fact, the strategic dialogue for which Prime Minister Modi has gone to Russia for the last couple of days was started in 2001 when Mr. Vajpayee was Prime Minister. So he's only continuing a relationship that has been at play since India became an independent country. So why denigrate previous prime ministers, whether it's Pandit Nehru or Indira Gandhi or Narasimha Rao, because they were the ones who started this foundational relationship with Russia.
Even he has denigrated even Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Morarji Desai.
Let RP Singh respond.
Sapra Sahab, I expected today that you will greet 140 crore Indians for the getting highest civilian award, Prime Minister Modi getting the highest civilian award from the Russia. That was the least expected, and I intentionally didn't mention it. I thought probably you will do that as this award for the all 140 crore Indians, including you and me, including Dacha, and including diplomat police also. But that's how the Congress is. That's the problem with the Congress. I mean, they think no. That's the Prime Minister Modi is not the he's not the Prime Minister of the country. He's the Prime Minister of the BJP probably. There's the problem with them, and they have not still accepted him as a Prime Minister even after he has got a clean mandate and got a mandate to govern this country and to work for this country. But that point aside, there are tactical things which are happening, which is that in spite of the war with Ukraine, in spite of that West putting all that taboos on Russia, and still we are on with the relationship with Russia. We are buying oil, and that oil is being used here and is being used even to balance the oil prices worldwide also. So at times you have to look for in a bigger gambit, not with a...
No, his point is, RP Saab, that out of the $65 billion of trade you're doing with Russia, 60 billion is oil imports that India has imported from Russia. The balance of trade is heavily stacked in Russia's favor. That is his contention.
I'm answering that. Dacha, I'm answering that. Please, I'm answering that.
Zaka, can I mention one more point?
1 second. Let him finish. Yeah.
Also that there's a relationship between India and Russia in context to China also. So it's not intendingly everything is with trade. There are much more things happening more than trade. There are much more in relationship than only trade. How much balance is there or how much imbalance is there? There's a smaller thing. Then maintaining a balance of the power. That's more important. And then we know what sort of relationship we have with China, and that's why it's very important to keep that relationship with China, with Russia in comfort. One. Secondly, sir,
Zaka, I have one question in mind.
Yeah, one second. RP Singh finish and then I'll come to you, Sapra Sahab. Yeah.
You with your relationship with Aam Aadmi Party has started indulging into ruckus politics. Please, sir. So also that what happened in Sharm el-Sheikh? I mean, if you want me to talk about the foreign policy, what happened when we had 90,000 plus soldiers with us, and we could have immediately got Gurdwara Kartarpur Sahib, or much more than that. I mean, our army was there till Lahore. We could have done much more than that. We came under pressure of the US that time, and then we succumbed to the pressure. Although Bangladesh was stated, but we succumbed to the pressure of US. But here today, we are at the equal terms with Russia and US and other Western powers also.
Okay.
Keeping in mind our interest, the Indian interest. That's the foremost.
Prime Minister last month after his election victory first went to Italy. He met with all the G7 leaders, including President Biden, Mr. Trudeau, Giorgia Meloni, all of them, the leaders of the Western world as they are. And now in Russia, the next month, he's met with President Putin. Isn't that a sign, Mr. Sapra, of the fact that India has strategic autonomy? It decides who its friends are, and it can have one friend without offending another.
See, Zaka, amidst all this, we should not forget that there are important issues with regard to Russia. 50 Indian people have been duped and they have been admitted into the Russian army, and around 4 people have got killed. This is a major issue which Prime Minister should have addressed while he was addressing the
today
Indian diaspora over there.
It has been clarified. It has been clarified by top government sources that Russia has given an assurance to India that the remaining 40 Indians who are part of the Russian army will be discharged. They will be sent back to India.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Zaka, whatever you are talking, you're talking on the basis of sources. I'm saying why the Prime Minister himself did not mention this. Why he thought that this is not worth mentioning to the Indian diaspora or to the media over there.
Okay.
This is a major issue of India. And secondly, when the BJP spokesperson was talking about the earlier issue, let me give you one example. The BJP wants to sit in the driver's seat. They want to drive the car in the driver's seat, but they want to look in the rear mirror. They want to talk about all the past things. You can't drive a car by sitting in a driver's seat and looking in the rear mirror. You will definitely go to the accident.
I want to go to Dr. Zigon and also the Ukrainian representative. Dr. Zigon, you know, the problem is India, while on the one hand is trying to maintain strategic autonomy, it is showing the world that it can have very healthy and strong ties with the West, America, Europe, etc. And at the same time, it can have a strong relationship with Russia, as has been evidenced in these last 2 days. The problem for India is also that at the core of it, this war, this invasion of Ukraine strikes at the very principles of the UN Charter, which was outlined by the Ukrainian guest, which is territorial integrity, sovereignty, etc. And India has its own problems vis-a-vis China. We've had for the last 4 years an ongoing situation at the border where clearly China has infringed into Indian territorial integrity and sovereignty. Soldiers have died for it. Today we have an active hot border with China, which we never had before 4 years ago. So India, and the worry for India is, as Russia grows closer to the Beijing axis, to the China axis, in fact, Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi, I believe, have met some 6 times since this war began. The worry for India is it cannot allow Russia to go into the Chinese corner.
Absolutely. I think that's a correct issue to be discussed. First of all, we should avoid any attempt to slice the geopolitical map in favor of one side or another. The world, today's world, is extremely complex. If one party raises its voice in favor for international law, balance, etc., the other party should remember that it should be followed the very same way. Second of all, India truly has all the ground to be concerned about a close strategic relationship between Moscow and Beijing. That's the fact. And definitely the visit of Sri Narendra Modi to Moscow is aimed at underlining a balance in this triangle, because it's a crucial, vital national interest of India to sustain a good strategic and even more than privileged strategic relationship with Russia. And Russia, in its turn, is interested in counterbalancing its geopolitical basket of interest between Delhi and Beijing. And I think it's in favor of both parties.
All right. Mr. Marechko, and then after that, Ambassador Puri, I'll give him the final word. But Mr. Marechko, You know, Ukraine is up against the wall on this one. It's also up against the clock. Because from Vladimir Putin's point of view, it's very clear if he holds on for another 3 or 4 months, there will be a change of guard in America. Mr. Trump will become president. Mr. Trump has publicly said that he will cut off any kind of funding from the United States to Ukraine, that he wants to have nothing to do with Ukraine's war effort. And then you're pretty much on your own. And then Putin knows that that's all he needs to do. He just needs to bide out time till November. So you're really running up against the clock.
No, we are not, because first of all, we don't know who will be elected American president. Second, Mr. Trump, as a candidate, he very clearly said that he doesn't agree with the conditions put forward by Putin, who is a war criminal. And thirdly, we have strong support of bipartisan support of both Democrats and Republicans. And we also have support of our European partners, which provide us with very substantial economic and military aid.
Okay. Ambassador Puri, so how does this play out and how does India safeguard its interests, particularly in the near term? There is, of course, a lot of tumult in the Western world. You have a new Labour government in Britain. You will likely have a left-wing alliance in France. Many are saying, the polls are definitely saying that Trump will beat Biden in the November election. How does India ensure that its own strategic interests are guarded in the run-up to these tumultuous events that we're expecting in the next few months?
Dacha, absolutely important. And I think that's the real point. India is now the world's largest country. 5th largest economy, on its way to becoming the 3rd largest economy. This visit, what does it do? One, of course, it allows us to show that we have strategic autonomy. We will do what is in our interest and we are multi-aligned. Secondly, it does show to the world India's coming of age on the global stage. After all, if that was not the case, so much would not be made out by the Western media on India going for a relationship which is old, time-tested, etc. Thirdly, it's very important, and you rightly said so, that in this visit, perhaps unsaid in the public domain, we did speak to them about China, this whole business of the Russians and the Chinese going in one corner, but letting them know that here is your old trusted friendship, a friendship with a strong partnership. Please don't go into any kind of Chinese lean in terms of the India-China affair and what it means for all of that. And fourthly, the very important issue of bilateral partnerships, whether it is oil, and let's be very clear, India's import of oil from Russia was good for Russia, it was good for India, and really speaking, it was good for the Western world because the price at their pumps didn't jump up by double or whatever else that you're talking about. Nuclear cooperation. And let me draw attention to something else. Nuclear has been a bad word for several years. But you know, as we look towards curbing greenhouse gas emissions, trying to move away from fossil fuels, away from coal, we have to look at hydrocarbons, green hydrogen. We must also try and look at nuclear, where perhaps India and Russia can contribute something. So all in all, a visit that was important strategically, and it provided the right signals for India coming onto the global stage and its importance.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests. Like I said, strategic autonomy has been demonstrated in the last month or so. First at the G7, where the Prime Minister met with all the heads of the Western world, from the President of America, the Prime Minister of Britain, the President of France, etc. And now, within a month, he's gone and met the President of Russia. Of course, India has to look out for its own interests, and that is what the Prime Minister has done. And as far as this political attack is concerned, that India should not be seen as doing business with someone who is at the head of a genocide or attacking children's hospitals in Ukraine. Well, like I said, India has done business with Saddam Hussein and with Muammar Gaddafi and with the likes of the military junta in Myanmar. There is geopolitics, there is geostrategy, and that should never be hostage to what is domestic political point scoring, as it were. Let's now move on to some domestic politics, and this is a big story coming out from Tamil Nadu, where 3 attacks, including 2 murders of political leaders in the state, has sent shockwaves across not just the state, but across the country. Just days after the brutal murder of AIADMK leader D. Pushpanathan and then the BSP state president K. Armstrong, PMK leader Shiva Shankar was also attacked outside his home in Cuddalore. The attack was caught on camera. A gang wielding sickles attacked him before they fled from the scene. Shiv Shankar, in fact, is receiving medical treatment after he was seriously injured. The BSP, the BJP, ADMK, PMK, everyone basically in the opposition has come together and accused the DMK of ignoring what they call a breakdown of the law and order situation. They say that opposition leaders are unsafe in the state and criminals are clearly having no fear of the law. Meanwhile, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin visited the house of the murdered BSP State President Armstrong in Chennai. He promised swift justice, but the opposition is not quite convinced.
Ma'am, in the last 14 days in Tamil Nadu, 134 murders are reported. Of course, in Chennai, a lot of murders are being reported, the important being the BSP State Chief's murder. This shows the complete failure of law and order, which is under the direct control of the Chief Minister, because he happens to be the Home Minister as well. And with respect to the surrender culture, with the Tamil Nadu BSP Chief's murder, also 3 hours flat they surrendered, next day somebody surrendered, till now 11 people they have picked up. So these are all points to a larger symptom that somehow the basic policing is not there in the state.
Last month, Congress district secretary was hacked to death in Tirunelveli. About 5 days ago, ADMK senior functionary was hacked to death in Salem. And then state chief of a national party, BSP, was hacked to death at his home. Yesterday, PMK functionary was hacked to death in Cuddalore district. So this is a day, every day happening. What is the Chief Minister doing? If he's not in a position to take control, let him hand this over to someone else, some other minister who's capable enough.
The culprits were nabbed. Immediately they were nabbed, and the full probe is on. It will bring out who is behind this, whether it was any enmity or what is the motive behind this.
All right, a couple of senior police officials have also been transferred, including the Chennai City Police Commissioner. Sumant C. Raman is joining us. Suma Anandan of the BJP is also joining us. Sumant Raman, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. There is a huge problem as far as law and order is concerned in Tamil Nadu. The BSP state chief, a leader of the AIDMK, now a leader of the PMK, political opposition party leaders are finding it difficult. They are scared for their life in the politics of Tamil Nadu.
Zaka, I don't think it is limited to political party leaders alone. I think there is a general unease even among non-political figures. See, the issue is that, the spate of incidents, and this started with the murder of Mr. Jayakumar, the functionary in Tirunelveli of the Congress. Subsequently, we had the Kallakurchi illicit liquor tragedy, which killed about 67 people. Then we had the murder of Mr. Shanmugam, the AIADMK leader in Salem. Then the BSP leader, state president, Mr. Armstrong. Then you had the PMK functionary in Cuddalore. Yesterday, there was an incident in Theni. I think, and in Pudukkottai as well. So I think that there is a serious issue. And today, actually, a few hours ago, Zaka, there has been a complete revamp of the police force. In fact, around 15 of the senior officials of the rank of ADGP and above have been shuffled. So hopefully the Chennai City Police, Chennai has a new police commissioner. There is a new ADGP for enforcement who is to look after the prohibition activities in the state. And there is also a new ADGP for law and order, Mr. Davidson. So I think that there is an attempt by the government at least to show that they are doing something.
Okay.
How effective it is going to be, we just have to wait and see. But yes, the ghosts of 2006 to 11 are coming back to haunt the DMK. You'll remember, Zaka, 2006 to 2011, again, there were such issues. There was land grabbing, which was rampant, and there was all kinds of accusations of law and order issues. So that led to the DMK losing power for 10 years. And now this is bringing back those old memories to the people. The biggest advantage for the DMK is that they face a by-election tomorrow, which they're almost certain to win, is that the opposition is split. So
okay.
they're not.
So let me ask
Uma
Anandan of the BJP, one, to the point about Dr. Raman saying that the opposition is split, therefore whatever noise you might make against the DMK, because the vote is split, including in tomorrow's by-election, the DMK stands to win. The other thing is, DMK spokesperson Saravanan, you heard him a moment ago, he's saying that even in the case of Mr. Armstrong, immediately the culprits were arrested, they're all in jail now, and the investigation process is on. So how do you respond to both those points, ma'am?
See, one thing, just because there has been a shuffle in the police personnel, the DIGs or ADGPs and all, is that going to solve the problem? And one more thing, the opposition being split, that is a different matter. We are discussing whether DMK wins or loses. What is the moral stand they are taking? How do the public view them? That is what is more important. Elections may come and go, but just because they are in power, they normally by-elections are won by them, won by the ruling party. I would like now to list the violence, the total breakdown of law and order. 28/4/24, one doctor in Avadi, his wife, civilians. You see, it is just not that dons or antisocial elements are being finished. Even common man, they are being murdered in broad daylight. Old couple, senior citizen, age is no bar, sex is no bar, profession is no bar. People are being killed in broad daylight or evening or twilight is a daily occurrence in Tamil Nadu. That is what we are discussing now. The same DMK government, for one instance, when they were in the opposition, it's a different stand they take. But now, daily you open the newspaper, there are at least 6 to 8 murders occurring across the state of Tamil Nadu.
But ma'am, the
Total
question that
breakdown of
Dr.
law and
Raman was
order.
asking is, how do you bring political pressure to bear on the DMK? How do you make them feel the political pressure of what you clearly are saying is a breakdown of law and order in the state?
What does he want to do? If the government is insensitive to everything, they are just not bothered. The same government asked the retired Justice Chandru for an insignificant thing. While these things, they want to brush aside the carpet. How do you bring sense into an insensible government?
Okay,
how is that done?
Dr. Raman, how is that done? She says it's an insensitive government.
It is
a
moral responsibility of the ruling government.
Okay.
Why should Mr. Sumant Raman talk about the sensibility of the government? How do we bring sense?
Okay, let him
Is it
respond.
not a ridiculous
Let him respond. Let him respond, ma'am.
Zaka, right now, the opposition, despite all the incidents that have happened and the great opportunity that it has got to put the DMK government on the mat, is busy sniping at each other. Yeah, day before yesterday also, Mr. Annamalai is making very caustic remarks about Mr. Edappadi Palaniswamy. See, the point is there is no realization that their divided house is actually what is not exerting adequate pressure on the DMK government. Now, the point, Zaka, is that law and order, there has been a general theory that law and order is generally always a problem when a DMK government comes to power vis-a-vis an AIADMK government. This is not with reference to Mr. Stalin, but more with reference to his father's previous governments. And that has been a theory in Tamil Nadu that when AIADMK comes in, at least law and order gets improved. Now, this was a great opportunity for Mr. Stalin to prove that that theory no longer holds good. But the point is, until a few hours ago, except for those 2 transfers which came, and even in the Kallakurchi case, suspending transferring a collector and suspending an SP and a few prohibition enforcement wing officials is not going to solve it. The days after the Kallakurchi incident, there were reports every day in the papers of thousands of liters of illicit liquor being seized. What happened? Why did it have to take 67 people's lives for the government to act?
To crack down on bootlegging. Okay. Uma, and then final word. I have to wrap up after that. Yeah. You just heard him.
See, I would like to say, how do the culprits get away? Because they have political influence. It is merely on issues of land grab, women, value systems, drugs. It's an entire scenario which the government has, and this one may say that a divided opposition. But what about the responsibility of Mr. Stalin? The same Mr. Stalin demanded the resignation of Mr. Edappadi at the top of the hat. Wow, see, we cannot take the horse to the pond. It has to be the responsibility. Mr. Sumant Raman has to attack Mr. Stalin all the way. We cannot say that we as opposition have divided.
He's not the leader of the opposition in the state, is he? But he's just a mere
No, but he can
political
point out.
commentator,
See,
with all
but-
respects to
No,
Dr.
but
He need
Raman.
not mumble.
Zaka,
He
the
need not
point is
mumble
they don't
about
understand that
mumble
they
about
are
the
the ones
inadequacies.
who are actually enabling the DMK government to get away with lax law
Okay.
and order.
I'll-
Every other day there is some issue.
I'll leave it at that. We'll see how this plays out. But I think it's very clear that there is a serious problem with law and order, not just for those who are in the field of politics, opposition leaders. We've just listed out the number of cases in the last few days alone, where the BSP state chief, an ADMK leader, a PMK leader yesterday were all attacked. But I think the larger concern is this nexus between criminal gangs and those in mainstream politics, and whether the Stalin government can crack down on that. I also want to talk about what is another case that has been having resonance right across the country. The country has been shocked by it. The Worli hit-and-run case involving Mihir Shah, the son of a leader of the Shinde Sena. Mihir Shah, who was absconding for the better part of the last 2 days since this hit-and-run case, has finally been arrested by the Mumbai police. He was absconding for close to 60 hours. It comes after Shinde Sena leader and Mihir's father, Rajesh Shah, was granted bail by a Mumbai court yesterday. Rajesh Shah has been accused of instructing his son to escape from the spot and asked the driver, who was also there in the car at that time, to take responsibility for the accident. The police have managed to recover CCTV footage which shows the car dragged the woman in question, the victim in question, for about 1.5 kilometers. The accused then exchanged his seat. He got off the driver's seat, took the passenger side seat. The driver then sat behind the wheel. They abandoned the car after they crossed the Bandra-Worli sea link, reached Bandra, and then managed to escape. We also caught up with the husband of the victim, who was there, who was driving the scooter when this accident took place in the early morning hours of Sunday.
सर अभी जो है पुलिस ने ये कहा है कि मिहिर शाह को अरेस्ट किया गया है शाहपुर से। सर आपको लगता है कि आप कई बार कह रहे थे कि धाराएं सही नहीं लगी है, तो आपको लगता है कि आप जो अरेस्ट किया तो आपको न्याय मिलेगा?
अभी तो न्याय मिलने वाला नहीं है, क्योंकि उसको 24 घंटे का अंदर पकड़ लेता तो समझ में आता था। अभी बताओ, अगर उसने गुनाह नहीं किया तो वो छुप क्यों गया? उसने गुनाह नहीं किया तो वो छुप क्यों गया? वो सामने क्यों नहीं आया? अगर उसने नहीं लेके गया, एक्सीडेंट नहीं किया तो वो सामने क्यों नहीं आया? 3 दिन छुपा क्यों? इसका राज क्या है? इसमें पॉलिटिकल कुछ है? इधर इसमें कुछ पॉलिटिक्स रहेगा, इसलिए वो छुपा है ना। हाँ, अभी वो ऊपर से वो लोग प्रेशर डालेंगे, हो गया खत्म। क्या कर सकते हैं हम लोग गरीब लोग हैं, हम लोग क्या बड़ा वकील नहीं कर सकते, हमारे पीछे कोई नहीं है।
सर ये भी कहा जाता है इन्वेस्टिगेशन में कि आप लोग जब स्कूटी पे थे तो तकरीबन 1.5 किलोमीटर तक आपकी वाइफ को गाड़ी से धक्का लगा गया।
ऐसा कौन बोला 1.5 किलोमीटर तक गया? अभी बताओ, सीजे हाउस से सीलिंग कितना किलोमीटर है हमको बताओ। सीजे हाउस आप जानते हैं, सीलिंग जानते हैं? फिर मेरा औरत क्या उधर गिर के 1.5 किलोमीटर गिर के क्या चल के गया उधर?
I want him, but we should get justice. My mother should get justice. I want him to get this hanging. Like she is in really bad pain. उसको बहुत लगा है. I saw her with my eye. The hospital I saw her. She's in really bad pain. I want her justice.
All right, we'll take a quick break here on Brass Tacks. On the other side, the threat of the Houthis continues in the Red Sea. They are continuing to disrupt the world's busiest trade route, despite the interventions of Western navies, whether it's the US, the British Navy, or even from time to time European navies. But why have these Western powers been unable to rein in the Houthi threat over the last 6 months since the first Red Sea attacks? We'll have a deep dive on that right on the other side of this quick break.
Indian students stuck in Ukraine during the beginning of the war. Remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to both the Israel president as well as Ukraine president, as well as the Russian president, and a safe evacuation of the Indian students really happened as well. So this is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first visit ever since he became the Prime Minister, out of the country. He's gone on a diplomatic visit as well. So obviously it's a very important visit given the fact that there's going to be the discussion of the Ukraine war also, which is going to be on the agenda, because the Indian government is always in the opinion that war is not the solution for anything else, and we are not in a condition to wage war as well. So of course other key issues including defense and the fact that India has been buying its petrol from Russia has also been on the watch for many countries, especially in the West as well. So all these discussions will be extremely important as Prime Minister Narendra Modi continues with his visit. Of course, he had a first. He landed there yesterday. He had a one-to-one meeting with the president, with President Putin yesterday, and the results are already there for people to see. There are many Indian families who wanted their people to be back, given the fact that several Indians had laid down their lives, had in fact suffered because of the war in Ukraine, and basically they were converted into soldiers for the Russian army, but they will now be returned back to India. That's of course a huge diplomatic coup as far as India is concerned.
Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is currently in Russia, sojourned, landed in Moscow on Monday evening, and upon his arrival in Moscow, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was accorded guard of honor at the airport itself. Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister, Denis Manturov, received Prime Minister Modi at the airport, and Russia's President Vladimir Putin hosted Prime Minister Modi at his countryside residence in Moscow. Now, Prime Minister Modi and Putin were seen shaking hands as well. Today, the Prime Minister is going to meet the Indian diaspora, after which the first leg of his 3-day visit will come to an end, and the Prime Minister will then leave for Austria, which will also mark the first trip by any Indian Prime Minister to the country in last 41 years.
Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, has arrived in Moscow for the 22nd annual summit. At the airport of arrival, he was received by First Deputy Prime Minister, His Excellency Denis Manturov. He was also given a ceremonial welcome and guard of honor. His Excellency First Deputy Prime Minister accompanied him to the hotel. At the hotel, Prime Minister was welcomed by a large gathering of Indian community members. Prime Minister has a packed schedule. He'll be attending the 22nd annual summit. He will have restricted and delegation level talks, and he will meet the Indian community, he will address the Indian community members, and also visit Rosatom, an exhibition space.
And CNN News 18 Siddhant Mishra spoke with Ambassador.
More than 6 months after the Houthi insurgent group in Yemen started disrupting maritime traffic in the Red Sea, global shipping has had to come to terms with a new normal. Delays, derangements, and higher costs are just getting worse. This is despite the efforts of the US, British, and European navies that have been on station the whole time attempting to counter the Houthi threat. But so far, they've not met with much success. That the world's premier navies, from America to Europe, appear to be struggling to subdue a band of insurgents does raise some painful questions. What is the utility of sea power? What is the proficiency of these Western navies? And if they cannot seem to control a band of guerrillas, then what chance do they stand in any future showdown with a major rival like China? The US Navy has admitted this has been the sharpest fighting that it has had to face since World War II. And that is our top focus on Crux Decode. For the last year, the Houthis have been controlling the gateway to the Suez Canal. They've been attacking both civilian and naval ships since late last year. This is part of a campaign to try and put pressure on Israel over its war with Hamas. Commercial ships, which includes big container ships, bulk carriers, oil and gas tankers, they've all quickly been fleeing the Red Sea. They're now preferring to take the much longer but safer journey going all the way around the Cape of Good Hope in the bottom of Africa. Eight months on, the disruption to shipping has suddenly gotten a lot worse. Back in late June, Houthi attacks sank a ship, the second big ship that they've sunk since their attacks began. US Central Command's public messaging is almost a daily drumbeat of reports of US vessels who are swatting away drones and missiles. The Houthis, who've used anti-ship missiles to great effect, are now increasingly resorting to using surface drones. As a result, the costs for shipping containers have soared from what used to be around $1,500 for one container to well over $5,000. This is according to S&P Global Commodity Insights. Rates are now much higher than they have ever been. Big shipping companies that were warning a few months ago that the usual glut of ships would hamper earnings, they are now rolling in cash. Maersk, which is the world's largest shipper, has increased its profit outlook thanks to these inflated rates because of the Houthi attacks. So when a container ship diverts all the way around Africa, it increases the direct cost of shipping by adding another 10 days, lots of miles, and lots of fuel consumed. But the larger question is this: how has a band of maritime terrorists in small, impoverished country like Yemen managed to spook the global economy and also befuddle some of the world's biggest navies? These navies, the US, the British, and a rotating group of European navies, have been trying to restore normal shipping service since the start of the Houthi campaign. The war cover insurance rates for vessels passing through the Red Sea are now up 1,000% compared to the pre-conflict levels. One insurer even launched a special, first-of-its-kind war insurance for shippers who couldn't get coverage otherwise. It's a sure sign that the Western naval presence has not brought any calm to these dangerous shipping lines. But not all ships are being targeted by the Houthis. The ships that are really in the crosshairs are those that have a linkage with Israel, the United States, or any other country that is seen as generally supporting Israel in its war against Hamas. What we are also seeing is that shipping associated with countries like China, Iran, Russia, even India, to a much lesser extent, has been targeted. So part of the problem is that the two naval forces, the US and the British on the one hand, and the European Union's navies on the other, have two different missions altogether. The Anglo-American force is aiming to intercept threats and strike wherever the threat is originating on land in Yemen. The Europeans, on the other hand, have stuck very close to the straight and narrow, which is to protect merchant shipping without actually taking the fight to the Houthis. Neither approach seems to be working. The US and UK effort is to try and degrade the Houthis' ability to target shipping. That has ended up as an expensive game of whack-a-mole. The Houthis have proved to be far more mobile and better supplied. The deployments and constant interceptions have eaten into the US Navy's own magazines. In fact, so much so that congressional aides are saying that the United States is not producing nearly enough of the standard air defense missiles that are used by US escort ships in the Red Sea. It's expensive as well. The Navy and suppliers like Raytheon, one of the largest defense manufacturers in the world, are now looking to much older and cheaper substitutes to use against the Houthis. After all, the Houthis are using low-tech weapons like drones to attack ships out in the Red Sea. While on the one hand, they want to keep the high-end missiles for use in a possible future conflict with China, in the event that China were to attack Taiwan. But that message has also been diluted by actions of the US Navy in the Asia-Pacific in recent weeks. The USS Eisenhower, which was due to head home after it was given 2 extensions, finally there was a replacement for the Eisenhower. At least the announcement came through last week that the USS Theodore Roosevelt will be deployed in the Red Sea. But the message that's gone across is this: it is at the cost of pulling out the USS Theodore Roosevelt, one of the largest aircraft carriers in the world, out of the South China Sea. In the South China Sea, it was showing American power in the middle of a very serious showdown between China and the Philippines, which happens to be a treaty ally of the United States. So the apparent failure of both US and European navies to try and secure the Red Sea does not necessarily call into question the utility.
Presented by to India, Katharina Visa on Prime Minister's Austria visit as well. Listen to what she has to say.
Ma'am, this is the first time after 40 years that Indian Prime Minister is visiting Austria, and we have been told that the core of this visit is going to be innovation, technology, business. Talk to us a little bit about it.
Yes, it is right. Prime Minister Modi is on his way to Austria. It's the first high-level visit at this level in more than 40 years, and we are very pleased and honored that it is taking place in this year when we are celebrating 75 years of bilateral relations between Austria and India. You are right. One important part of this visit is the strengthening of our economic partnership and technology and innovation. Cooperation in the startup sector has been an important focus of our business cooperation over the past 2 years. There have been, I think, 5 startup missions both ways in the past years. And during the visit of the Austrian Minister of Labour and Economy, Minister Kocher, to India in February, a bilateral startup bridge was launched between India and Austria. I think it's India's 21st startup bridge. And it has already brought more cooperation in that sector, as you mentioned.
And some big developments now coming in at the top of the segment. As per the government sources, Russia has decided to discharge and in fact facilitate return of all the Indians working in the Russian army after the Prime Minister takes up the matter with the President Putin. This is very big development as 4 Indians have already been killed in the war, 10 have returned, but nearly 35 to 40 Indians are still believed to be stuck in Russia. Remember, India has been pressing very hard for return of all the Indians fighting in the Russian army as well, and it can be seen as a diplomatic victory for India. We have CNN News 18's Aman Sharma and Payal Mehta joining us on the broadcast. A very good morning to both of you. Aman, first coming to you, what kind of messaging can be decoded with the strategic partnership that India is trying to hold with Russia under Modi 3.0?
See, this is a very big development. Russia has decided to discharge and facilitate the return of all Indians which are fighting for the Russian army currently in Ukraine. This is a major breakthrough achieved during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ongoing visit to Moscow. The development has come after Mr. Modi took up the matter with Russian President Vladimir Putin during their private dinner on Monday. This is what sources are telling us. And, the plight of the Indians fighting for Russia and the Ukraine war has been a key concern for New Delhi in key recent.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Prime Minister Modi has wrapped up his visit to Russia. He told Vladimir Putin to stop the war. He got Russia's highest civilian honor, told off the West about its lectures on Russian oil and asked Moscow to speed up defense deliveries. All this in barely 24 hours, plus a dinner meeting with President Putin at his estate. We'll bring you a lowdown. Meanwhile, in Washington, the NATO summit begins and Russia's attack on a Ukrainian hospital is the key focus. Will it backfire by rallying more support for Kiev? We'll discuss that. Back in Europe, what are Chinese troops doing in Belarus? Why is Beijing flexing its military muscle on a NATO border? Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is visiting Beijing. We'll discuss the agenda and whether India should be concerned. Aviation giant Boeing agrees to a guilty plea for the plane crashes that killed more than 300 people. Is it too little, too late? There's a debate on the job situation in India. What does the data say? A report on terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Is Laos the latest country caught in China's debt trap? Why Singapore has put insects on the menu? And what is digital hoarding? Are you a hoarder? We'll talk about this and more. The headlines first. The Pakistani government authorizes its spy agency, the ISI, to trace and intercept calls and messages, saying that the move is in the interest of national security. This decision by the Shehbaz Sharif government